Hi, everybody. I'm Toni Cameron from Metamorphosis Teaching Learning Communities, and I'm here with my colleagues, and we're going to teach you a new game.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Slabic.
Hi, I'm Renee McShane.
Hi, and I'm Daniel Scher, and let's get started with our Build Me Mosaic game.
You've had an opportunity to explore some of our other interactive games. Today we have a special treat because we're going to be working with a game Daniel and I developed that is in the content area of geometry. And since both of us love geometry, we're really excited to get started.
All right, so let's learn how we can build a mosaic. And we have 4 different shapes to work with. We have a green triangle, a yellow hexagon, a blue rhombus, and a red trapezoid. And I can use as many of these shapes as I would like. So let's say I would like to begin by putting a triangle onto my screen. I'll tap on the triangle icon tool. And when I do, I see a preview of the triangle I'm about to construct here in the upper right corner. And I can just tap anywhere I like, and that triangle zips on over, and now I have it here in my pattern that I am just starting. I can drag this triangle anywhere I like, and I can also drag this red point, and notice that this rotates the triangle around. So that can be very helpful when you're trying to fit shapes together. All right, let's add another triangle to my pattern. So I'll tap again on this tool, and I have my triangle here, and I'll just tap anywhere to add it to my mosaic. And now if I bring this over, I see that maybe I'd like to rotate this so that these 2 edges can line up when I drag them together. And oh, look, it looks like I've actually built another shape. So maybe I'll now tap on my rhombus tool and bring that rhombus down here, and maybe I'll drag that right over here. So I can keep using these tools, adding as many copies of these shapes I like to my mosaic, and then build something. So now we're going to watch Toni do a think aloud as she builds her own mosaic.
All right, this looks very exciting. I'm just going to focus on building something. And I like this, I like yellow. It's like the sun. And I'm going to move that right into the center, maybe move it over. I'm going to take another one and put it right next to it. Oh, I see. I got to move this down as I'm doing it. Ooh, that's so pretty. I got this space here. What would fit in here? I think I'm going to try a triangle and put that in here. And I want to put another triangle, and I'm going to put it, oh, whoa, I got to do something. I got to rotate it. I think that's what Daniel said, and that would go here. This is kind of cool. I think I'm going to put a head on it with this shape. I forget what this shape is called. Oh, if it's got a, hey, it looks like a garbage truck. No, maybe not a garbage truck. Maybe I'll give it some feet. I don't know what it is, but it's kind of cool. So if I put one here, I'm going to have to put one on the other side because it matches. So pull it up. I don't know that I like it. I'm going to change it. Something about it that really didn't sit well with me, but I'm going to do this. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. And now I've built something so beautiful.
All right, so in this short clip that we just watched Toni complete, we noticed her using a lot of ideas in geometry to help her create this design. And at the beginning, when she created those 2 hexagons, she started randomly, but then notice the way she started thinking about that empty space or that negative space and spatially structuring what would fit inside that negative space. And that's how we saw her use the triangle on the bottom. And then she looked at the space on the top, but how tricky the triangle didn't fit. And so what did she have to do? She had to rotate that triangle. And these are big ideas in geometry, the idea of spatial structuring, rotating, visualizing. And then finally, note the way she started off building something randomly. And then she shifted into thinking about how this design looked like something in her world, a garbage truck. But then when she didn't like that or didn't like the way it was going, especially when she couldn't put the wheels on it, she shifted her thinking again and did something that children naturally do, which is to start thinking about symmetry. And so even though Toni didn't describe it, it's interesting to note that her choices ended up in creating a symmetrical design.
All right, now that we've had the chance to look at building some mosaic patterns, I wanted to show you a few little tips to make your patterns even more beautiful and your design a little more efficient. So for example, if I would like to build a mosaic and use a lot of triangles, I can double tap on this triangle icon. And now every time I put a triangle down, I get a new one. I don't have to come back and tap for that. So I might want to quickly put down 4 triangles and then tap this X to say that I'm done. And then I can start to rotate them and move them. Now, another thing I can do if I decide I don't want 4 triangles here is I can back up a step. And now I have 3. I also might decide that, hey, I don't really like green so much. Maybe I'd like these triangles to be a different color. So I'm going to go and click here on this painter's palette. And here I can change the color of these triangles. Maybe I'd like them, for example, to be this nice shade of pink. So I'll tap on the pink swatch, and then I'm going to then click on these 3 triangles. And hey, they're all turned pink now. I can use that in my pattern. I might also decide after I've made some other shapes and I'd start adding them here, that, maybe I no longer want to have 3 triangles here as I'm starting to put this pattern together. So I can come here to my delete capability and click on this triangle and say, hey, let's get rid of that. And let's get rid of that point too. So now I only have 2 triangles. And the last thing I want to show you is that if you decide you want to make a mosaic that's a really detailed mosaic, and these shapes maybe are a little too big, you can even change how big these are. I'm going to come down here to where it says side length, which is the length of these sides. And the default is 70 pixels, which is what you're seeing here. And let's try making that smaller. I'm going to make these 40. So now they're really tiny. I might also decide I want these to be even bigger. So let's make these 120. Now I have some really big shapes to play with. And when I'm done, if I decide, I don't really like these shapes at all, I want to start again, I can just click on reset, and it puts everything back, and I can start all over again. So those are some ways that you can make your mosaics even more beautiful. And you might even think of taking a screenshot when you're done so you can share your beautiful mosaics that you create.
All right, in the next clips, we're going to be seeing some different variations of building mosaics. And as you're watching, you're going to see all of us playing roles of teacher and students. So there's some critical questions that we want you to think about as we're going through it. What strategies might children be using as they play this game? What would be the big ideas in the math underlying their thinking? And then what questions might we as teachers or parents be asking as children are engaging in this game? All right, 18, 19, just one more shape I need to add to get to 20. And 20. All right, I'm going to go ahead and check. Sorry, try again.
So, Renee, I see that looks like you were building a mosaic, with 20 shapes. And if we look at the top, it actually says make a design whose value is 20. I'm wondering how that's different. And I'm wondering if the information at the bottom left of the page here can help us rethink your design.
Oh, I didn't even realize that each of those shapes had numbers. Thanks.
You're welcome.
All right, so we watched the teacher and student interact. One of the most important things we can do as teachers is actually watch students and not interfere with them. It became obvious as Stephanie was watching Renee that she didn't understand what the 20 meant, that the value of the shapes altogether had to equal 20 rather than the 20 being 20 shapes. She also pointed Renee's attention to the fact that each shape has a value, and that information was given in the lower left-hand corner. So 2 things to think about as you're interacting with your child or your student is, what am I noticing? What does it mean mathematically? How can I interject in ways that support students' thinking?
Okay, so if I want to build this another way, I see there's a reset button here, and that's going to put everything back. So I think that is how I'm going to do it, to just start over again.
So Daniel, before you do that, I'm noticing that you want to start over. And I'm wondering, do you have to rebuild and start over to create a new design?
I kind of think I do. So I'm going to press reset here to move everything back. Now
All right, so that's something to think about. So when you're building your new design, next time I want you to think about, do you have to start from scratch, or can we use parts of your design to create a new design?
So when we see Daniel interacting with the puzzle, we see that he has a number of high-level thinking strategies. One is he keeps track of the values of both the shapes in the well and the total quantity. He starts with the biggest quantity. He can use a double and add on easily. He can think about what he's built in relationship to what he needs. So he has 18, he knows he needs 2 more, he easily builds it. What's on the horizon for Daniel is the idea of exchange. And Stephanie poses a strategic question which Daniel chooses to ignore. Notice her strategy as a teacher, though, isn't to compel him to use this strategy, but to think about, I wonder at what point Daniel's going to realize, oh, I could exchange a hexagon for 3 rhombus. He's not there yet, but that doesn't mean he won't get there.
Wow, Renee, this is really amazing. I love the way that you took screenshots of all the designs that you made. And when I was watching you, I noticed you doing something so cool. Every time you made a new design, you were doing some exchanging of some of the blocks. So for example, in the first design, I saw you take that yellow hexagon and exchange it for 2 trapezoids. And then you did it again. And then you exchanged those trapezoids for rhombuses and triangles. And it was such a cool strategy that I watched you do. And I'm wondering, do you think there's another way to create your same design?
Well, I mean, I thought I was done. I swapped and I exchanged all of my last rhombuses for the triangles, and now it keeps coming and saying, can I find another way? And I just wish it would tell me I was done and I found them all, but it just doesn't.
Well, you know, this is a tricky thing. Just because the computer tells you that there's another way, doesn't mean there's another way. So that's where we have to come up with a strategy to figure out, do we have all the ways?
So notice how Stephanie watches Renee and then names and notices and names what she's been doing as a student. She challenges Renee, however, do you have all the possible ways? And Renee is frustrated. She wants the computer to give her a check and say, yes, you found all the possible ways, you're done. The real challenge here is put back on the student. How could you prove you have all the possible ways? And if you have all the possible ways, what does it look like to prove it? This is an enormous challenge in early childhood classrooms. And it's one we don't want to avoid as we're working with our students.
Okay, so now I am on the page 3, which has a new challenge. The value of the rhombus is 6, and make a design whose value is 30. This looks a little different to me. I don't see the values of all the shapes here. What do I know? I know the value of the rhombus is 6, and I need to make a total of 30. So let me bring out a rhombus here. That's 6. If I have 2 of them, that's 6 and 6 are 12. All right, so I'm gonna double that. So I'm gonna drag 2 more out so that I go and I have 12 and 12 is 24. And I need to reach 30. So, one more rhombus with a value of 6. That should do it. Could make these look a little prettier, but something like that. I got it. Oh, and there it's asking me again, can I find another way? Well, how am I going to find another way? Let me reset this. And I know the rhombus is 6, but I don't know the values of these other shapes. Well, what can I say? Well, a triangle is smaller than this rhombus, so its value is, it's going to be less than 6. And, well, let's see, this trapezoid, that's bigger than my rhombus, so that's going to be greater than 6. And I have this big hexagon, that's bigger than all the other shapes, so that's going to be even bigger than the trapezoid when I figure out its value. So I know something, but I'm still wondering how I know the values of these shapes.
So notice the design of this puzzle really challenges students' thinking. They have 2 clues to help them, but these clues aren't sufficient to actually solve the puzzle. You could do a guess and check. You saw Daniel find one solution by pulling over 5 rhombi and doing a repeated addition strategy, but there's something much more complex here in the constraint built into this design, and that is students have to start reasoning with the relationship between the shapes. So for example, if the rhombus is 6, it has a value of 6, the triangle is a half of that shape, which means it has to have half of the value. That's a complex multiplicative kind of reasoning. Notice that the rhombus has a value of 6. What does that mean in relation to the hexagon? Well, the hexagon has 3 times the area, which means that it has to have 3 times the value. This is very complex for students to reason with. We think many children will be challenged by this puzzle. It's important to let them try, to question them, and if it's too difficult, to let them drop this puzzle.
So the very final page of our game gives kids an opportunity to build puzzles themselves. We think it's really important for students to be able to not only solve puzzles that we give them, but to be able to create and share their own. It makes them really think more deeply about the mathematics. So let's take a look at what we have here. Notice again, we have the same shapes, and now again, we have places for the values of all these shapes, but those spaces are left blank, and it's for the children to fill those in themselves. And when they do fill them in and create this challenge, they're going to have to be thinking about the relationships between these shapes and their numerical values they assign them. If they assign these values randomly and give the puzzle to a friend, their friend may not be able to solve it because they have not thought about the mathematics when creating the puzzle. So if I were creating a puzzle for Toni, I might fill here the value of a particular shape. Maybe I want my triangle to be 5. And then after I fill in the other shapes, I might hide those shapes and their values so that Toni doesn't see them. And I could also put a target here for what I want the target of my mosaic to be, the sum of all those shapes. So this is a fun way to bring everything together and allow children to create puzzles that they can share with each other, or maybe you as the adult.
We would like to thank you for joining us. We had fun sharing our new interactive puzzle called Me Mosaic. We hope you try it out, and we hope you're sufficiently challenged that you come back for more. Please check out our website,